Choosing the right ERP software for your organization is one of the most important things you can do to make your digital transformation successful. And in today's video, we're going to talk about some best practices and lessons for organizations about to go through the ERP selection process. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. I'm also here with Brian Potts, who is our COO at Third Stage Consulting, and Adam Cheatham, who's our Senior Manager of Strategy and Transformation at Third Stage Consulting. Brian and Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Well, we'll jump right in. And first question I'll ask for you, Adam, or I'm sorry, for Brian. I'll ask you the first question. So, what is the importance and why is a structured software selection process so important for organizations that are about to go through the process?
Well, it's similar to any project. If you don't have a starting point and a map, you're just going to start grabbing at what's ever available, and then you're going to be leaning on media, publishings, and basically advertisements that are available across the web. You're going to hear some hearsay from people you talk to, and there's not going to be any structured method for managing that. And basically the strongest voice is going to get to the decision makers, and that's rarely, if ever, a good way to make a decision on software.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Adam? What have you found to be the case?
I think the biggest part of that is the unbiased component of it, where so many software evaluators in the industry have one tie or another to a particular or a small subset of actual software providers, and that's either their knowledge base and really the only thing that they know, or even worse, they're getting paid to make specific recommendations or getting some type of an incentivized component of the process to implement that software. So what you end up with is somebody who says, you should go with fill in the blank software because we can help you with that software implementation. And having an unbiased look at that gives you an opportunity to start fresh and without any type of undue influence that allows the focus points to be on the business requirements and the people that are implementing that software, which is the company that will make the purchase decision.
Yeah. That's a good point. It's such an important decision too. It seems like something that as an executive, I would not want to just wing it or, throw darts at a dartboard or take a chance on biased sources or whatever the case may be to make that decision. What about on the, with some of the clients we're working with across the world in their selection processes, and some of them are well past the selections now into implementation. But if you look back, Adam, at some of the recent selections or clients we've been involved with, what have some of the lessons been as far as mistakes you've seen them make or tendencies you've seen them want to pursue that you've had to course correct or perhaps they've actually made some of these mistakes along the way?
I'd focus on two. The first is an executive who has a predetermined bias. Maybe they've worked with a particular software in the past, and a lot of times we find that through the evaluation process that a particular software is the best fit, but it was never about the evaluation proving anything but a specific executive's predetermined bias, and that's a challenge that leads to problems down the road, particularly in implementation, because it complicates things when you go through a process for evaluating things. You get people involved, and then you select a software, and then the CEO says, no, we're going with something different. And that challenge, it creates complications in change management, in that people were like, well, I thought we were going with this one, but why are we going with that one? And the answer is, well, because the opinion that we said we wanted from you is actually not the opinion that we were looking for. So we already knew the answer. We were just hoping to get you guys on board, and that's a bit dishonest in my opinion. The other part that leads to complications along the road is not paying attention to the requirements along the way and what it is the business actually needs. People make the mistake that this is an ERP implementation or a digital transformation of any kind is a technology project, and it's not. It's a people project. It's a business project, and the technology is an enabler. Without understanding that, you end up making decisions based on technology and not the right determinators.
Yeah. What about you, Brian? What have you found to be the case, the lessons from recent clients that we've worked with?
Yeah, I think the biggest is buying into and tying into what Adam just said, feeding off your requirements, and instead we see a lot of organizations tying to market hype, what the software vendors are currently promoting, and what competitors are using. We see a lot of times, well, so-and-so manufacturer is on this software, they're close to us, let's just move to that one. People don't understand the complications around critical and differentiating requirements that Adam was talking about, focusing your selection on those rather than just general industry standards that don't necessarily apply to you.
Right. Now, if we want to avoid some of those mistakes and challenges you guys just talked about, what do you think are some of the most important aspects of a software selection and the things that clients should be most aware of or invest most of the time and attention on, of all the things we do to help clients through the selection process?
Yeah, so again, documentation of requirements, and not just, we have a lot of clients come to us saying, oh, we've already documented requirements, you can just work from these. When we're talking documented requirements, it needs to get to a level beyond a base category of requirements. So yes, it needs to handle all your APAR. That's fairly standard. It needs to handle order processing. It needs to handle even multiple, order processes. But what we want to do is make sure that we vet the specifics within your organization, the specifics of those requirements to the software. So getting probably a level lower, and we generally look for the several hundred range rather than the handful of requirements in terms of a number. And then the second is looking beyond. When you're looking at software selection these days, it's not about finding a core ERP. That might be what the target is, but you have to take into consideration your greater landscape, the bolt-ons, the tie-ins. There's almost no situation that we've run into in recent days where there's not a hybrid of systems to some degree. You need to take those into consideration, define what ERP is before you go out and just try and find one, because otherwise you're going to get just a hybrid of bolt-ons and applications that may or may not be useful. The cost gets spiraled, and then you still haven't met your requirements. So having that structure set ahead of time is very, very important.
Yeah. How about you, Adam? What have you found to be the case?
I'd build on that strategic component of it, where having an alignment across the board at the executive level is one of the most important components of it, and understanding what it is you expect from this. The walking into this with an eyes wide open approach, this is what ERP does, and just as importantly, this is what ERP doesn't do, is at the executive level particularly is really critical to success. Because if your expectations are off out of the gate, then you'll never achieve the successes that you're actually shooting for. So knowing what that is important. Brian focused on the idea of requirements. I think that's something that is absolutely critical as well. And the biggest part of that is focusing on why you do certain things as opposed to necessarily how you do it. You have certain concepts of this is how we do things, and I need this field to say this thing, and focusing down at that level is letting the things that you do today dictate the software of your future. And there's a lot of changes involved in these things, and you end up doing things like paving the cow paths if you don't look at things that could be different. And focusing on why you do things a certain way helps with that, as opposed to necessarily how things are done. Because if you focus on how things are done, you just focus on the problems that you have today and reintegrating those problems into a software in the future.
Yeah, those are great points. Now, what about if I'm a client of ours and I'm going through the selection process? Would I just look at, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft? Is that where I'm looking, or are there other viable options outside you call it the big three ERP systems? So what are your thoughts, Brian?
I think the answer is fairly obvious, is that if you look at the available applications, it's in the several thousands. If you look at the core ERP applications, it's still approaching 1,000 these days. It breaks down from the tier 1s into the tier 2s, which are considered, they're still well known, but they're tailored for whole suite ERP that maybe focus on a particular vertical market. They might have limited capacity in some degree, but very few organizations need the strength and the bandwidth of a tier 1, nor the cost. So looking at the tier 2 and even tier 3 applications, which are more niche applications. That's what you would hybrid together in a best of breed environment. The advanced functionality available in some of the tier 3 applications are outstanding. If you've got a complex warehouse environment, for example, if you got to deal with produce freshness or timing of steps and all that, get something that focuses on that, because a core ERP isn't necessarily going to have the core functionality that you need. Even a strong tier 1 isn't going to have that level in some of the called advanced modules. You still need to tie in advanced functionality within a tier 1. So no reason not to look at a tier 2, tier 3 hybrid application model.
And so, Adam, you've looked at you've worked with a number of clients, including some mid-sized clients. What's your experience been with the tier 1s of SAP, Oracle, Microsoft versus some of the tier 2s or industry-focused solutions? What's your experience been?
I think the biggest, most important thing about that is that you're talking about a company that you're going to do business with for hopefully 20 years or more. An ERP system isn't something that you should replace every 5 years. And a lot of times we end up with clients that do replace them, something that they implemented 5 years ago. I recently had a client that selected an ERP system 5 years ago, and now they're going and replacing it because it wasn't the right level of information for them. It didn't integrate with the systems that they thought that they wanted, and so they bolted on more of them, and they just kind of compounded this problem where all of a sudden you have no benefit of what you thought you were going for, and all your predetermined answers were not only expensive, but they were wasteful. And when you look at the idea of, say, well, why don't I just go SAP or Oracle or Microsoft, whichever seems to be the flavor of the week, you end up with a poor cultural fit as well. And those cultures are partner-based relationships that end up dictating not just the success of an implementation, but the ongoing relationship throughout the full term of the contract.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems that, with mid-sized companies, especially, you've got the tier 1 systems, where it's an option, but you also have some real viable mid-sized tier 2 options that in some cases are specialized in a certain niche or functional area that you focus on. For example, manufacturing, manufacturers have a lot of options that other industries don't have. And a lot of those are niche focus solutions that try to be specialists within that area. So those are all really good points. So what about, last question for you guys around the process then, or the selection process, but what about change management? So, change management is something we talk about a lot with our clients, and a lot of clients think that, okay, well, we're just selecting software right now. We don't really need to worry about change management until later because we're not implementing anything yet. Adam, I'll throw this one out to you to start. What role does change management play in the selection process? Why is it important? Is it important? And what do we do about it?
Yeah, and it's like change is a very personal thing. And when you change somebody's software, you are changing the way that they interact with their company, which means that you're changing the way that they do their job, and that you're changing their value statement to your company. And managing that isn't just about training and testing. It's about effectively setting expectations, communicating well, and making sure that people are ready for this change so that as it comes along, it is something that is managed effectively and that nobody is shocked or surprised by coming in one day to a new software system. And the way that we approach that type of engagement is to say it's from an eyes wide open approach and from an engagement oriented approach. Software demonstrations is a great part of the selection process that I think is a change management tactic in getting folks involved. You want people to be able to tell you, this is the software that best fits for the job that I have today. And executives don't really have a lot of ability to think downwards in the hierarchy to what the transactional level of how a software would be better for their company might be. They see dollars, and that's really it. And at the end of the day, if the software that you choose is less expensive but doesn't solve the daily problems, you end up with a very expensive technological and digital paperweight that does nothing but make your problems worse and impact your bottom line in a negative fashion.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so Brian, what do we do, during a selection process? What are the things that we do to help our clients and teams through the change, get started on the change management process, even while they're selecting software?
Yeah, so two things stand out. The first is to get an assessment of what potential resistance you might be looking at, because you don't want to go in with assumptions that everyone is going to like or hate something. Organizations that say, oh, everybody's on board with change, they may in the outright be stating that they're okay with change, but deep down, like Adam said, they're perceiving something's changing within their job. They're going to be resisting it. There's going to be, in a sense, cracks created. When we want to identify through an assessment where those areas of resistance might be and what the root cause of those, whether they're intentional, unintentional, there's areas of misunderstanding, misalignment, and then tailoring initial communications to those areas of potential resistance so that you're heading off change resistance before it has a chance to pick up. Because once resistance starts, it's like a cancer. It starts to spread through an organization. People tie into, I don't want this to happen. Even if they don't understand why, you've got to be cautious with the initial starting points of resistance and making sure we talk to that and basically head it off at the curve so that it doesn't take hold. And then once the selection is completed, you've already got onboarded in a sense, the organization as a whole, and it's much easier to pick up into implementation from that point.
Yeah. We find too that, change management ends up being on the critical path more so than the technological implementation. And so the better handle we have on the change management component of it, the better handle we have on our overall implementation plan. I think that's an area where a lot of companies don't see that connection or that tie between why it's so important during the selection process. So closing thought here, a closing question then would be, we are obviously ERP consultants. We're independent. We help clients select software. We help them implement it. So we are admittedly biased in that we think that there's a huge amount of value that ERP selection consultants can bring to the table. But I'll ask you guys just more of a general neutral question is what should companies be looking for when they're looking for a software selection consulting firm to help them through the process? And why don't we start with you, Adam?
I think the first thing you look for is somebody that is, of course, agnostic and can prove and show that they're agnostic. And then through that, you look at a diligent and very specific, structured selection process that's proven. And third stage has got a structured process that breaks things out purposefully in gathering requirements, then starting with an RFI and an RFP process that's a bit oriented towards the needs of the client. And then getting into demonstrations. And you want to look at this diligently in a way that allows for a focus on the needs of the business, a focus on the change management tactics that are employable across the organization for selecting and implementing software, and then the experience in actually implementing software systems. And that you want to be able to say, these are the challenges that you're going to have to embark upon throughout the implementation process. You want that to happen during the selection process and be able to know what's coming so that as you're selecting your software system, you know what challenges you're going to have along the way and you can head them off early. The last bit of information that I would say is important to selecting a consultant for selecting an ERP solution is somebody that has the ability to look at your business and your needs and cater that structure towards your needs as a client and be flexible in addressing and identifying what it is you want and need so that your process of selection and implementation can reflect those needs.
Yeah, those are great points. How about you, Brian? What else would you add to that list?
Yeah, well, building on Adam's last point is technology understanding experience is a given, but finding a firm that is able to look bigger picture and understand business and business strategy and tying technology and business strategy together. It's not a common capability. We often find organizations that have selected the software purely, we talked importance of requirements early, but you cannot select only on requirements. You've got to understand business trajectory. You got to understand scalability. You need to understand greater corporate vision and alignment of technology initiatives with that business strategy. The ability to come in and do that is really what you want to look at, because you're looking at the capability to tie a future state of business to technology, not simply a ball of technology in itself. And that involves being able to look outside the ERP realm, looking at the tying applications, looking at what else is in play, being able to evaluate, what systems from our current landscape are going to stay in place, what's going to tie together, how do we structure an ERP and a digital roadmap. Those bigger picture mindsets are, I think, the differentiators with software evaluation firms.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I want to thank you guys for both being on the panel of ERP selection experts. I think this is some great advice for people listening and watching here. We've included some links down below to a whole variety of software selection articles and white papers and things of that nature. So I encourage you to check that out off of our website. Included some direct links so you can go directly download some of that content. So Brian, thank you for being on the call today.
Absolutely.
Adam, thank you for being here. Pleasure as always.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you bet. Thank you, guys. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope you found this helpful. And remember to please subscribe to the channel, like this video. Feel free to share it with colleagues and friends as you see fit. And look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you and take care.